not necessarily useful and to the point information. So what is the idea of data? Remember, data is a processed information. It is a data, it is a which includes a specific information from a specific source. I will give my one example. Structure of India is changing. Then naturally we will refer to the census reports of government because it is a specific source and it gives a specific kind of information, that is how the population is changing in different age groups, in different on different criteria, in different manner, and on different strata. And that is very important about information. Second thing, information, specific information cannot be obtained from non-specified sources. Please try to understand what I mean here. If I want to assure myself about a particular institution's performance, especially financial performance, then I cannot use a report or a commentary from a business journal. Better, I should use the financial statement of the particular company or business organization, because the original financial statement will tell me the truth. Comments will tell me what the author feels. Random information is not useful for a purpose. That is, if at all we collect any kind of information from any source and say that this will be useful for my research, no, that is not the way we conduct a research inquiry. Generally available information is useful, but process information is more useful for a specific purpose. Just try to understand. Often we can get a lot of information about a particular topic, about a subject from various sources, but that is a general information. When I talk of research, I want specific, need-based and pointed information which is not available unless until I specify my purpose and I specify and process the manner in which the information is required. Second important thing, there is a very important limitation of information, that people often imagine that this may, I believe, and therefore I like, therefore, because I presume. No, that is not the way to collect information, because where there is no imagination, there is no horror. When you add imagination to reality, you create fiction. When you present the reality in its original format, you present the truth. What a researcher is supposed to do is to present the truth. He cannot malign, he cannot add bias or prejudice just because he feels that a particular piece of information in its original format will not fit or will not be useful or will not be appropriate for his cause. No, that is, a researcher has to be unbiased and impartial. He should always go with realities and not with imagination. So what are the features of a good data? It is processed, it is purposive, and it is trustworthy. These are the three important things which a researcher must always keep in mind whenever he is thinking of collecting data. Because if the data is not properly processed for the purpose of research, then the raw data may mislead him and may give him wrong conclusions. Second thing, whenever I think of processing the data, I systematize it. I classify it. I arrange it in a specific manner. I arrange it in a specific chronological order. And that is how I know many things about a particular phenomena. Second thing, a data has to be purposive. That is, it should be in a specific direction in which my study goes. Rather, my direction of my study is decided by the kind of data that I acquire. And most important thing, the data should be trustworthy. Just because someone has said something, I cannot consider this piece of information for my research. Just because someone has opined something, I cannot say that this is believable. I should verify the originality, the authenticity, the appropriateness, the timeliness. Many times people go with hearsays. Because I have heard so and therefore I believe. This cannot be the approach of a good researcher. So the question comes, what is the meaning of reliability of data? Data becomes reliable only when it is relevant, when it is collected in an honest manner, when there is no prejudice, presumption, preconceptions, misconceptions, misnomers about a particular fact, about a particular source of information, about presentation of a particular information, and which is justifiable. As you all know, the Rotary Club has a four-way test. Similarly, this is a four-way test of a good data, that it should be trustworthy, it should be reliable, it should be unbiased, honest, and justifiable. What are the features of a research data useful for research? First, specialized. Naturally, a specialized data is not available from every source, whatever is available in the universe. It has limited but specified sources. I will give one example to prove my point. Just try to understand. I want to study the employee's response to a particular bonus scheme in one particular industrial sector. Then naturally, the information sources are limited. The industrial sector, select or representative industries from that sector, right type of employees who are influenced by the type of bonus given to them, rather increase or decrease or whatever, opinions and expressions of such employees as well as management regarding the new bonus scheme and likewise. So what happens? My sources become limited, but they are directed. That is, I know before I start my study who are the persons, who, what are the institutions or agencies, and what are the approaches which I can use to collect the information. Second important thing, a data has to be organized. Please remember, you will be rather studying in your research process the concept of tabulation of data. A right kind of tabulation, a well managed, well classified information, and that too arranged in a very logical, rational, and objective manner, helps every researcher to develop a lot of clarity about the problem and accuracy so far as conclusions are concerned. When the data is presented in a haphazard manner, or some data is missing, some data is unnecessarily added, our conclusions not cannot become reliable. There always remains a point or a shadow of doubt about whether the conclusions are really based on the data collected, or whether the researcher or the author has added some part of his imagination, his thinking, without knowing whether this is right or wrong. Remember, in practice, if at all you are a practicing researcher, then you cannot go for conclusions which are based on unclear data, conclusions which are based on erroneous data. So, many times when you present a particular conclusion, people ask you how you have concluded this. You can always say it is easier to know it than to explain why I know it. But remember, a good researcher never says so. He says, no, I know it, and I know for sure how I came to know about it, and I can explain what are the sources. So what are the sources of data? We have a large number of sources. First, just try to understand. Everyone are delivering some information becomes a source. Everyone, whether an institution, agency, company, corporate house, government agency, department, or a person or a group of persons. Just try to understand. If you are a good investor and you are interested in taking risk, you may invest in stock market. Then what happens? People often come to you with a tip. Usually in the morning on CNBC or Z News or NDTV Profit, you come across some experts who discuss Aaj ka Sauda, what should we purchase today, and likewise. It is a tip. This is a piece of information. We often believe because the people who are talking about some stocks are experts in the field of financial management and stock market. A report in a business magazine. Just yesterday only, I came to across one news item that many American companies as well as Korean companies are interested in establishing a new semiconductor hub in India. Now, presently, this is only a report. Which companies are coming up, in what way they will invest, what amount they will invest, what kind of technology they will be providing to us, are all the things that are not there in the report. Naturally, this is a mere piece of information to form an opinion, but not to come to a conclusion. A statement by the finance minister, this is very important, this is more reliable. Many times the finance minister says India is very close to have an agreement with Russia for defense deal and to spend some 65,000 crore to purchase some kind of missiles. We then came to know that the defense ministry must have submitted the proposal, which is approved in the cabinet. The finance minister will not come out with such a statement without approval of the cabinet. And a dialogue in a clubhouse, very important. People often tell the truth when they meet each other in the clubhouse or in parties than when they have a formal meeting. but then still it is not a reliable source of data. So how we classify data? For we classify data into two basic sources. One is called as formal, another is called as informal. What is a formal source? A known and quotable source. When I say Mr. X, the chairman of the company, in his chairman's report or in his annual financial statement report has said so, it becomes a formal, it becomes an official statement of the company. A formal statement, a formal data is available and it can be challenged because someone will say, no, he has not said so. We often come across people who first say something and then they deny, but then we have a proof, we have evidence. Whereas in case of informal sources, it is exclusively available to one particular person or agency which cannot guarantee the originality and accuracy. It cannot be quoted saying that this man has said so, therefore I believe. No way. It is subjective, prejudice, and in many cases, it is unreproducible. That is, you cannot reproduce in the same way because you do not have an assurance, you do not have a guarantee, you do not have a confidence that the data is acceptable and reliable. So many times we come across unreliable data. Who gives you unreliable data? The generator of the data. People who spread rumors, people who tell you something which they believe but about which they are not sure. It is because of their attitude and approach towards facts, towards opinions, towards events, towards incidences. Many times we will come across situations where people opine with a great confidence. But when you counter question them asking, are you sure? The man says, no, I have heard it. It is my belief. This is a kind of rumor. This is a kind of misconception that the man is generating. So a generator of a rumor gives unreliable data. The supplier of certain information which is not guaranteed. Many times certain NGOs, some specific types of group of persons spread certain information which is extremely biased and which is not at all reliable. Why they do so? Because they want to have certain gains from those particular pieces of information that are circulated in a society, in a market, in a particular field, and likewise. Sometimes the users also provide information which is not assured in terms of reality, in terms of acceptability or reliability, because the user who provide the information may have a certain specific purpose which he wants to serve, because of which he is fabricating the fact. That is, the facts, if they are separated, some pieces are true, but some of the pieces that are added to these facts are not necessarily true, and therefore the purpose oriented information given by the user often is unreliable. There is a classic example from Mahabharata when Dronacharya asked Yudhishthir, Ashwatthama is killed, but which Ashwatthama? Elephant or man? Yudhishthir said, I do not know. I am not sure. User was having a specific purpose in his mind. And the most important thing is relevance. Please try to understand. As a researcher, we should be always serious about the sources and about the manner in which we receive information. We should confirm the relevance of the information for a specific research purpose. Otherwise, the information is useless. Please try to understand, most of the researchers often have a temptation to believe in whatever information comes to them. But please remember, this is wrong. The temptation to form premature theories upon insufficient data is the bane of our profession, that is the profession of researchers. Many times researchers come out with a great high quality research paper published in a very good journal, but when the authenticity of the data is uh, verified, it is noticed that the journal or the editors or the author has committed a mistake while tabulating, while presenting, while concluding certain things based on that data, because the data itself was insufficient, inaccurate, or unreliable. There is another thing which I must bring to your mind is criteria of source of data selection. What criteria we should use for selecting a particular type of data? Please remember, what kind of research problem we are trying to analyze will basically decide the type of data. What is the depth of our research study and what is the kind of our hypothesis and objectives often decide the type and nature of data required by the researcher Of course, relevance, criticality are some other factors that we have to take into account. Our data should be comparable because many people may be working on the same problem. And if they come out with a extremely different conclusion, if they criticize our conclusions, we should be able to justify. So comparative sense of data is also very important. This is how Sherlock Holmes has applied his method of analysis in different situations. Sometimes he has believed in newspaper articles. Sometimes he has gone for the primary data of footprints on the floor and the blood stains. Sometimes he has used some secondary sources like dogs. Sometimes he has analyzed handwriting and many other such things. Please remember, a researcher should use multiple methods of data collection about which we shall discussing later on. There are different sources of data. It is unwise to say that only a particular source is always good and useful, and a particular source is always primary or secondary. It all depends on the nature and the manner in which we conduct the inquiry. We conduct the research inquiry. The status of data may change as per the situation or as per the nature of problem. I will explain this later on. So, what are the considerations before we select a particular data source? Please, first and the most important thing, do not attack on privacy of the respondents. Do not ask questions which will force them to reveal some hidden, some very important sensitive information from their point of view. And further, if at all a respondent has shared with you such critical secret information, do not disclose it unless until it is extremely essential because it is an attack on his modesty and privacy and character. Second thing, never make a high-fi, extraordinary tall claim. Always be modest whenever we are making a claim based on data because 100% accuracy of data usually cannot be assured unless until it is tested in a specific physical laboratory, which for social scientists becomes very difficult. Please never exaggerate any fact. Have clarity of source so that you can justify why I am saying so, why we are arguing like this, why the researcher feels so. There should be no breach of professional code of conduct. Now, please remember, of course, today this is not the topic of our discussion, but research also requires certain values, ethics, and code of conducts. Naturally, anything which is violating this code of conduct, whenever we are presenting the data, even if the data is good, still it is not very good from the researchers as well as from the society's point of view. So please try to understand evidence. The evidence never lies. That is the basic criteria of selection of a good data. If you are having believable, reliable data, then naturally we can become a good researcher. So the quality of the source decides the type of data. What is the quality of source? Quality of source is indicated by reliability, validity, varied interest of parties. If people have different interest, naturally the presentation of facts, evidences, and information will be biased or will be colored. If at all we are having, that is, the respondent has a different objective and the researcher has a different objective to pursue, naturally there will be a great confusion. Sometimes both of them will try to mislead each other. Our specific requirements and our hypotheses should be in coherence with the kind of information. That is why Mr. Holmes has said, when you have eliminated all the impossible, whatever remains, however improbable, must be the truth. That is way to conclude. Please believe that a data source tells you many things, but what exactly it really means to you depends on your skill to interpret. When you eliminate all the raw data, unnecessary data, unwarranted data, unwanted data, a specific, useful, objective, rational data set remains, and that is what is the truth. So, we should take certain precautions while selecting the source of data. First, proper estimation of the source. Please remember, sometimes a large number of sources of data are available, but then we have to find out which source of data is meaningful for our research purpose and whether the data source provides you updated, timely, and time bound information. Second important criteria is always cost. Remember, no data usually is available free of cost. We have to spend time, money, labor. It all is a part or component of cost factor. So please consider this cost factor in terms of its effectivity and wastage. Also consider relevance. That is whether what is my purpose of research and whether the data pursues or helps me to pursue my purpose of research, whether the data is object oriented or whether the data is heterogeneous in nature. All these things, including time frame, that is, if at all I am undertaking a research for a specific time frame, 2015 to 2020, then I will find that the data of 2013, 10, or even 1999 is useless for me. Sometimes we require futuristic data for making estimations and projections. Then naturally we will require such data which is more reliable in terms of the projections, in terms of futuristic estimates. Try to prefer source where biases are limited or where there are no biases, and believe that every organization, every institution, agency that provides a particular data to you has a philosophy and value system. So anything that is contrary to the philosophy and value system of the organization will either prefer to remain silent or will not disclose the data. Now, a data source means any media source or data input system. That is, anything can become a data source. It is not that only there are some specific data sources. It all depends on the nature of inquiry, type of probe. Sources vary and different sources are required for different purposes. You might have visited or you might have met some good journalist, investigative journalist. They go to any extent to collect data and they find out a variety of sources which we even cannot imagine. And a source can be primary or secondary. What is the primary source of data? It is a basic and first-hand information gathered for a specific particular purpose from a particular source, and which is otherwise not available in the format in which the researcher requires. These are the criteria, or these are the basic features of primary data. So why a researcher requires primary data? What is the nature of primary data? Sometimes primary data means basic data such as financial information, information regarding profile of the organization, information regarding census, information regarding demographic structure. They are all called as basic data. Then there is the empirical data. How a particular course of event has taken place in a given period of time. From 1947 to 2021. How a particular industrial sector has improved, enlarged, developed. How the family system has changed over a given period of time. What kind of new social theories came into existence because of social changes over a particular period of time, say 100 years. These are all empirical sources of data. And in certain cases, we get a case study. That is, we analyze an event, a particular activity, a particular phenomena for a specific purpose. We find out different features and facets of that phenomena. Based on that, we collect certain information, which is a primary data based on case study. Then there is a secondary source. The secondary source usually is applied, it is comparative. In many cases, it is futuristic also. What is the purpose of collecting primary data? Primary data helps you, rather a researcher is helped to know the reasons behind a particular phenomena, to understand various underlying current responsible for an event and the factors responsible for a situation. I will explain this in this way. Just try to understand. Suppose there is a change in the market structure in a particular city, and we try to analyze why the market has grown up so much so in a specific period of time, 5 years or 2 years or 10 years time. Then we come to know that a new station is established, a new airport is established, new transport system has come into existence, new kind of industries are established. So what happens? We collect evidences responsible for a particular situation, which is the basic purpose of primary data. When we analyze responses of children to a particular advertisement, or when we analyze how a particular sport event is accepted by a particular class of audience, in all these cases, we collect primary data. Please try to understand primary data cannot have a larger set of biases, or primary data cannot have more presumptions, cannot have more prejudices. Otherwise, the primary data loses its utility. That is why it is rightly said by Mr. Holmes, I never make exceptions. An exception disapproves the rule. Please try to understand primary data has to be very clear, objective, rational, reliable, and authentic. But often we have certain myths about primary data. Primary data may mislead whenever we come across certain reports, though original based on certain presumptions, may have a strong bias regarding a particular phenomena, particular activity, because the person who prepares a particular report may want to justify or defy a particular activity, fact, or conclusion. Many times, government also comes out with a very primary data regarding economic situation, employment, but then we have a feeling that this data is not reliable because even government also tries to pursue a particular purpose. Sometimes the primary data collected by the researcher is not reliable because researcher himself or herself may have certain limitations like myopic view, short-sighted approach, ideological blindness, that is he is not ready to accept certain facts, limitations of tools, that is the tool that is used to collect data is not useful or preferable in that particular situation, and likewise these are the various sources of primary data. First hand basic information. Second, interview talks with some experts, prominent persons, video shooting of an event, pre-setting of a news. This I will like to explain. Remember, sometimes a reporter or a person collects information about a phenomena. When he collects the information, it is original. You find that if we present the same information in the same format, it may create some kind of debate, it may lead to some kind of problem. So what happens? Then he modifies the information. Before the information is modified, doctored, fractured, or fabricated, it is called as pre-setting. So pre-setting news or pre-setting information is often reliable primary data and data that we collect through questionnaires. There are certain difficulties in collecting primary data. The certain difficulties which I often feel are very important is non-disclosure policy of a company or institution. When we visit a IT industry, asking them to provide certain information regarding their promotion policy, regarding their HR policy, regarding certain interpersonal relations, the company straightway says this is not possible. This is against our organizational policy. Naturally, then we cannot get the primary information in an exact format. This is a major difficulty. There is another difficulty when the person to whom you communicate with, to whom you contact for getting information as a researcher, may have a personal grudge or prejudice. We all are slaves of prejudices. Naturally, for certain phenomena, we have preconceptions, we have strong beliefs. If at all a question is asked against our belief, we try to retaliate by giving a information which is not acceptable. There is a conditional support. That is, sometimes some people say that I will give this information, but on certain basic conditions of non-disclosure or disclosure. Question of secrecy is also a very important limitation of primary data. Problem of non-cooperation by the respondents. Many researchers experience this. Sometimes when you go to a bank to collect information from employees and you offer them the questionnaire, they say, okay, you keep it with me. I will fill in when I have a free time. And then what happens? The respondent who fills in the questionnaire fills it blindly without thinking. He just keeps on ticking the on multiple choice options, or he writes something trash which is not required. Why this happens? Because he is not willing to cooperate. And most important thing, regulations and prohibitions regarding use of certain data. Government regulations, companies' internal policies also prohibit us from using certain data. I will narrate you one incident to explain how it is difficult to collect primary data. One of my friend wanted to collect information regarding workers' opinion regarding certain amenities and facilities in a particular industrial institution, industrial undertaking. It was a big industrial undertaking near Pune. So we have approached to the factory manager and we requested that kindly provide us this data. The factory manager was very glad. He welcomed us and he said, okay, no problem. How many respondents you are expecting? We said at least 150. So he said, okay, you give me 200 questionnaires. We have 500, 600 workers. I will circulate it and I will collect the information. In a week's time, I will provide you the information. We were very glad. We were very happy. So after 10 days, when we visited the factory manager immediately asked his secretary to bring the data. A bundle of questionnaires duly filled in was presented to us. And we found that every question was rightly answered. So naturally, out of curiosity, a question was asked. Sir, how it is that the workers in your factory are so cooperative? The factory manager smiled and he said, "No, that is not the thing. I asked them to assemble in the conference room. I circulated the questionnaires and then I dictated the answers. Everyone rightly filled in the questionnaire as per my dictation. Now, what is the use of this data? Can this be called as primary data? It was one questionnaire filled in by the factory manager multiplied by 150 employees. It has no meaning. Then comes the secondary data. About the limitations I will discuss later on, but please try to understand one more important aspect of regarding primary data. We often observe many things and we start believing them. But please remember, there is nothing more deceptive than an obvious fact. When the things appear obvious, they are not real. Sometimes there are hidden things, sometimes there are hidden facts, sometimes there are certain issues which are not disclosed, which cannot be easily understood. This is a very common experience of many researchers that when they visit a factory, they find the workers initially are very good when they opine about management, managerial policies, work culture, etc. But if you interact with them for long, then suddenly they start criticizing the institution. So, what should be the criteria of collection of data? Our purpose of research, our objective of research, and most important, the rationality and foundation. Our system of data collection should be based on a very rational, logical foundation. We should not have a preconception regarding the institution, regarding the respondents, regarding the event, and then we should not start collecting data. Rather, we should believe that I can get good rational information provided I am open to the respondents and the respondents are willing to cooperate. So, how to select? First, ask a question: what is my topic? What is our topic of research? What is the scope of that topic or the scope of that research? What is the focus? What is the specific aspect of my research study about which I want to collect data? And what are the objectives of my research? If at all these questions are answered rightly, rationally before we start collecting data, then we can get good and appropriate information. Now we shall come to secondary data. The data which is not collected from for the principal purpose of research is usually the secondary data. Any newspaper report, any article published in a magazine or whatever can become a secondary data. It is not collected for the primary purpose. That is our purpose of research may be same, but it is not collected by us for this, but it is collected by someone for some other purpose. So naturally, even if there is a great degree of congruency of data, it doesn't mean it matches with our purpose. It is not collected from basic source because we believe in someone's collected data as if it is accurate, which may not be, and has application other than the purpose of our research. That is, the purpose for which another person has collected the data is definitely different than our purpose. So naturally, this cannot become the primary source of data. This is simple example. A report published in Yojana about employment pattern in coal industry. Now, even if I am also studying the same problem about coal industry in Jharkhand province in Dhanbad district, still it cannot be that the data that I wanted to collect is already available with Yojana. I will have to collect my own data because I may have some different approach. I may use some different tools. I may get some more and basic data because of which my observations and conclusions may not agree with what is published in Yojana. A statistical database published by the Ministry of Corporate Affairs, it may say that the employment pattern in corporate sector has increased, the organized sector has given more employment to more number of youths. But then some non-governmental agency will definitely contradict it by saying that no, our observations do not match. Whether the report of the government or the non-governmental agency are both not totally reliable. Now let us understand our source. Please remember different sources are there. Some sources are basic, some sources are applied, some sources are supportive, so- some sources are comprehensive in nature, some of them are fundamental, and some of them are general. Naturally, what kind of source we should select depends on our approach of research, depends on our ability to collect information, depends on our objectives of research, as well as the kind of tools that we use for collecting data. Please remember a very simple, important thing. The data that is primarily easily available in its simplest form often is deceptive in nature because whatever we see but we cannot observe will always mislead us. The distinction between observation and seeing is very important. If we cannot understand whatever we have seen, then naturally we will not be able to draw meaningful conclusions. Now, when shall we use secondary data or why should we use secondary data? Please remember, please remember, every time we cannot collect primary data, for some kind of information, we have to depend on supplementary data or some allied sources of data which supports our observations, which supports our collected data, which substantiates our observations and conclusions. Sometimes the secondary sources are superior to our sources because the agency that is collecting these data may have better tools, may have better approaches, may have more exhaustive coverage. And naturally, so we cannot say that the secondary data is always not useful. Rather, in many cases, it is superior and therefore it is more useful. Second thing, who is collecting this secondary data, what kind of evidences they have collected will also decide the success of the use of secondary data in our research. It can justify our conclusions. This is an example. Many types data inputs are not easy to collect directly. That is, we cannot get certain type of financial information about a company, but definitely we can come across the same kind of information from stock market directory. I will give one example. Suppose I want 10 years changes in the earnings per share of a particular share of a particular company. If I approach the company and I will ask the question, can you provide me the data regarding earnings per share for 1991, 1995, etc., etc., the company will say, we are not in a position to give, we do not have time. But if I refer to the or pink book of stock market directory, I can easily get a comparative financial statement of the same company on hundreds of parameters for 10 years period. Data regarding taxes paid to municipal corporation. If I go to an individual and ask them how much tax you have paid to municipal corporation, he may not be willing to tell me. But if I go to the municipal tax department and ask for a statement of specific type of people paying taxes to the municipal corporation, the corporation may give me this data easily. Data regarding working women in organized sector. Many times, women who are working in organized sector are unwilling to share some information, but then you can easily collect it from some secondary sources. So how secondary data works? It adds to evidence, it creates a database, it helps you to treat or develop a topic in a neat and appropriate manner. It also provides you an opportunity to compare your observations, your data, that is the primary data, with some other observations of some other researchers so that you can justify your conclusions in a very rational manner. This is another example. Data about employment pattern in Maharashtra state becomes a basic to know whether the state is ahead on all India average parameter. Because you cannot collect the data of the entire state all alone. But the state definitely has its ministry, has its department that collect the complete data. So if at all we want to rank the states according to the employment pattern, naturally this data becomes very useful. Data about enrollment of students in colleges decide how the higher education is growing in a particular state. Naturally, we cannot approach every student or every college, but the higher education ministry department of the state can always provide you this information. So why use secondary data? Because there is a limit to use of primary data. Please, जरा कौन तेरे disturb करता है? There is a limit to use of primary data. Second thing, secondary data is very much multi-dimensional in nature. It also has added advantage of views of experts covered in that data, and it is collected from variety of sources. So before we select a secondary source of data, please try to understand to what extent I can use this data for my purpose of research, whether I need to search some other additional data whenever I am undertaking a research on a particular topic, whether the right search options are available, and what methods of search are useful to collect data. Many times, secondary data helps us to narrow down the scope of our study, to limit the scope of our study and make it more specific and more directed. And therefore, secondary data is also advisable in certain researches. Just one example will prove my point. If our research if our research is empirical in nature, that is historical in nature, then it is called as desk research. This desk research requires lot of historical data, which is comparable, which is evidence based, and which can provide us a specific direction of change or occurrence of an event. Naturally, here primary data is of very limited use, but more emphasis has to be given on secondary data. What are the secondary sources of data? Libraries, catalogs, popular references, periodicals, electronic databases, microfilms, internet, CD-ROMs, video and DVD sources, etc. So if you want historical data, we can easily visit a library like Royal Asiatic Society Library of Mumbai. I hope many of you might have seen this library. You can collect the data from National Archives. You can collect the data from centers of different agencies, such as there are various agencies of government working in different parts of the country that provide you us lot of information, Office of CSO or NSSO, etc., etc. Archive is a very important source. What is archive? Archive is a comprehensive data bank. It is a reservoir of information, especially on a particular topic. We can have different types of archives, such as local archives, internet archives, national archives, and even American archives. I will explain my point by giving one example. I hope many of you might have heard about one particular institution called Smithsonian. You'll be surprised to know that Smithsonian has a collection of huge information almost from 1825 till date in a very properly and systematically arranged form. There are certain American archives where the newspapers are collected and assembled and edited in a very neat and specific format. If a researcher who wants to study some aspect of historical movement in India in Maharashtra in 1910, then he may not get a newspaper of 1910 in India easily, but he can easily get it from American archives because they have such a kind of collection. So archives become a very good source of information. Film and Television Institution has a very great archive of documentary films and movies. I have personally visited. Hundreds of documentaries on very useful topics are rightly stored by this institution. On internet, there are many websites that work as archives of information. Most of them are paid, but they are very useful to provide you rightful information. There are newspaper archives, there are television archives, there are special collections, there are government archives and congressional archives. What are newspaper archives? If we know about Times of India has a great archive storage. That is, it has collection of a large number of news items, advertisements, articles. I have recently come across one book on advertising where the pattern of changes in the advertising were rightly narrated through illustrations. But all the advertisements that were shown in that book from almost 1870 or 1880 till date were taken from Times of India archive. Then Indian Express also is a great source of information reservoir. We have Asian Society of Archives in India in Mumbai and Delhi. We have National Documentation Center at Delhi. They all work as good sources of secondary information. Then there are various associations and societies that also provide lot of secondary information specifically to researchers or certain types of investigative journalists. Associations and agencies that work for a specific cause and objective. They promote and nurture and develop a particular purpose of our idea. I will share with you one information. There is one institution in Mumbai, Forum of Free Enterprise. For this institution, a great economist and lawyer, Dr. Nani Palkhiwala, used to present his budget opinions every year. This institution is now having recorded speeches of Dr. Nani Palkhiwala on almost last 50 budgets, along with their documentary evidences and hard copies also. If someone wants to study budgeting system of central government or in India, then he can easily visit this institution and can get this information so that he can rationally and rightfully analyze the budgeting system. A statistics published by NSSO is a very good data source of statistics on Indian economy. Statistics published as White Book of Marketing. Have you seen the White Book of Marketing published by Business India or Business Today? It gives a complete and detailed picture of marketing scenario in India for a particular year, number of institutions, markets, agencies, products, and whatnot. Then there are research associations. These research associations also provide a lot of secondary data in the print and CD-ROM format on websites through manuals, reports, monographs, occasional papers, and databases. There is one organization in Ahmedabad, Consumer Guidance Society of India. It publishes a large number of reports regarding consumer movement, problems of consumers, decisions given by various consumer councils, also publishes occasional papers regarding consumers' issues and matters of consumers' interest. Naturally, this becomes a great source. Various types of national educational institutions, including IIMs and IITs, come out with a good number of monographs and publications of their research publications or research findings on different occasions. There are certain major associations in India like Indian Merchants Chamber, Indian Society of Training and Development, Indian Society for Promotion of Fair Trade Practices, and even FPA, Family Planning Association of India. All these associations provide a great volume of secondary data on different issues in a very reliable and appropriate format. A good researcher who wants to supplement his observations of primary data can always visit such institutions. Then there is one more source of secondary data, that is biographical information. What is a biographical information? It is a detailed, listed and well documented publication about profile and work of an institution or company. Biographical indexes are available in various formats and popular biographical references are also available. Naturally, these biographical references provide us a good information about a particular research issue. If you are familiar with the magazine National Geographic, it has recently come out with 120 years, 125 years complete data regarding various issues of geographical interest of different parts of the world in a very systematic format, and that too in a CD-ROM, which is just available for 100 rupees. But then you can get lot of information about geography, various problems of ecology, environment, and profiles of different kinds of the zoological as well as geographical issues in a very simple and neat form, along with large number of pictures and articles. So please remember, it is a capital mistake to theorize before you have all evidences. It biases the judgment. Please collect complete information. Otherwise, do not come to a conclusion. Then there are subject references. What is a subject reference? Subject reference is a defined document about a particular subject or a theme of area of specialization. Just I will give one example to prove my point. If at all I am interested in studying family planning in India, this becomes a specific subject. Then there are various references regarding this particular topic, such as what were the plans of Government of India, what were the targets of Government of India, what kind of responses, what kind of advertisements, what was the budget, and how the change has taken place, and to what extent the change is positive or desired. Naturally, such kind of information is called as subject reference. It is now available through various sources, especially internet and specialized libraries. There are certain libraries that offer very good subject references to the researchers, such as Indian Institute of Public Administration. There are certain museums that also offer specific and specified information regarding a particular topic, such as Indian Institute of Oceanography and Marine Sciences. All these institutions are known for providing a very good reservoir of information. Then there are electronic databases. Electronic database is another subject specific source. Usually it is customized, licensed, and indexed. I can buy a electronic database either in the CD-ROM format or in the internet format, which can help me to get lot of information on one particular topic, such as even if I am interested in knowing how a particular industry is developed, jute industry or cotton textile industry, or for that matter any other industry, such kind of electronic databases are available. One institution from Ahmedabad, Ahmedabad Textile Research Association, ATIRA, has prepared a very good subject index, especially related with textile industry in India, its development, origin and growth. Many industrial associations, many types of chambers of commerce come out with such kind of subject specific references. Economic Times is also known for providing subject specific reference sources. Then there are databases. Yesterday only I have talked about database, but let me tell you again, database is a very important aspect for getting right, useful, sometimes primary and in many cases secondary information. It also provides a lot of articles, research papers, findings about a particular issue. These databases are either freely available and sometimes they are paid databases. The free databases usually offer only abstracts or gist or summary of a particular article or research paper, whereas paid database provides you the complete information, the detailed text along with references and quotations and citations and commentaries. So paid databases are complete, comprehensive and updated. Ibesco, JSTORs are the examples of paid databases. E-journals are also now available. E-journal magazines and newsletters are very good source to collect secondary information because most of the articles are well written. They are continuously expanding and edited. They are updated in many cases. That is by adding new information or additional information or current information. So what happens if I refer to a e-journal? I do not get only historical data. I get contemporary data also very easily. There is one more thing which I want to bring to your notice. If at all you are seriously interested in collecting primary data, you can easily join a discussion group on internet or a news group on internet. A discussion group is a group of specialized people, experts or people interested in a particular event, wherein they share their ideas, views, data they have collected, their opinions and even their articles on certain specific topics. You can visit the websites or web directories of such discussion groups, join them and collect information. Then there are general references. General references are available on internet very easily through Wikipedia or from any other such source. But please remember, though they are useful, subject specific, and easy to acquire at low cost, still they are not much reliable or they cannot be considered a authentic source of information. So please try to understand data is the essence of every good research. Every researcher must collect data before he formalizes a theory or make a concrete conclusion, draws a concrete conclusion about a particular phenomena. Then there are many other sources of information like databases, dossiers published in these newspapers, if at all we are taking a research in economics, social science, commerce, or even management. Some magazines are there which are very good source of information. If at all we refer to subject specific magazines, then we get very good quality information about a particular topic. However, magazines are classified in different ways. Magazines of general interest like Parade, Reader Digest, India Today, etc. Technical magazines like car, auto, electronics for you, or computers, data, etc. And professional magazines like chartered accountants, chartered secretary, or management accountant. Depending upon the nature of our research, depending upon the type of information required by us, we can refer to a particular type of magazine also. Good number of journals are now available in India. Journal has become now a essential basic source of data because it offers critical information about a particular issue. It offers information on divergent aspects of the same particular topic. It has contents which are based on experts' observations. It also helps you to know the past, that is empirical data, and the current data. And in many cases, some good journals are very exhaustive when it comes to the articles published in these journals. Now, the journals are also classified as research journals, business journals, economic and financial journals, subject specific journals, and applied research journals. It is the duty of the researcher to decide which kind of journal he should select depending upon the topic of his research, depending upon the nature of his study, and accordingly he should select the right source of journal. Now, there are some other published sources such as conference proceedings. Many times, conference proceedings are very useful information source to collect secondary information, to collect opinions of experts, even to compare our findings with the findings that are presented in a particular research paper in a conference proceedings. Seminar papers also have the same purpose. Occasional publications of certain agencies, certain institutions, colleges, research institutions, industries also provide good amount of data and information. Company and business profiles published by either the company or certain specific business magazines also provide good information. There are commemoration reports in honor of some great dignitaries or experts in the field, which provide specific information about the contribution of that person as well as articles related with the contribution of that person. We can use all these sources depending upon our requirements. Then there are non-formal sources of data, which I want to bring to your notice. Non-formal sources of data are unpublished research works. Remember, we all submit our thesis to university. Very few of us are fortunate to get their thesis published. Before we go for publication, we have to take consent of the university. We have to see that the thesis that we are going to publish is relevant, is contemporary, is having necessary and appropriate information. And of course, it is acceptable to the publication or publisher also. So many times we do not go for publication. So these theses which are submitted to the university becomes a very important non-formal source. Non-authentic sources. There are interviews recorded by some experts. There are opinions given by some personalities in the field, but they are not backed by certain facts. Then that becomes a non-authentic source. Experience sharing. Managers, experts, directors, social and political leaders, opinion leaders also share some opinions with you as a researcher. Their opinions are very good source of information, but they are still non-formal. Independent thinking of the researcher leading to a particular conclusion also is a good source, but it is again non-formal. So please remember, it is a capital mistake to theorize before one has completed data. Insensibly, one begins to twist facts to suit theories instead of theories to suit facts. Please do not commit this mistake. Do not develop theories and then find out facts. Find out facts, then only develop theories. So whenever we are planning our research, we should keep in mind certain things when we collect data. First, set an agenda. What kind of data? What type of data? From what sources? How I can develop a right research tool, research instrument to collect that data? What should be my strategy to collect the data from different sources, from different classes of respondents? How much time I can devote for collection of data by using one research instrument from one category of respondents or from one institution? Accordingly, if we plan, we can do it better. So while selecting a source of data, please take certain cautions. First, confirm the data source is authentic. Take assurance that the data that is provided is reliable. It is acceptable in the field of research or in the academic discipline. It is evidence-based, that is very essential. The institution or the person who provides this information must have a proven track record of authenticity, reliability, without which we cannot rely on opinions or information given by such persons or institutions. The person who collects the information, that is the researcher, must have appropriate expertise to confirm that he has used a right tool in a right manner. He should acquire necessary experience of collecting information from others while discussing, while interviewing, or while using a technique like questionnaire or observation. And of course, every source must have a great degree of credibility. So what are the sources, characteristics of a good source which we want to use for our research purpose? First and most important thing, it should be truthful. Many times people are willing to share information and data, but there is very limited degree of truthfulness. The quality of information also is very poor, so naturally the analysis never stands to reality. The person who claims to be an expert must have credible experience and expertise in that field, and which is proven in terms of track record. The experience of a particular person in a particular field which is worth sharing should be rightly shared without any prejudice or bias. The researcher must have a right caliber to collect data, then only it becomes easy. So please learn these certain things. Decide the kind of work which you have undertaken. Decide the scope of your research and then select the data. Select variety of sources so that you can have more authenticity, you have more degree of reliability and credibility about the source of data. Design your data needs and then approach to the respondents. Because sometimes information, but a part of it is not useful, so we waste our time and labor. So we have different listing tools to decide what kind of information we should collect, such as decide the quantum of information. For certain researches, the quantum of information required is very limited. But then we get a plethora of information because of which we cannot process it properly. Our work becomes too voluminous, too large, and of course too meaningless. Decide the nature of information and only go for the specific information. Please correlate the purpose of information and purpose of research in an appropriate manner. Then only the information required for the research can be rightly collected. Always find out what are the likely implications. In many cases, we forget to understand the implications of information we collect and publish, then there is a possibility of legal suit. Also, confirm the source purpose, because many times people provide information, institutions publish reports, and agencies go with a lot of statistical data, but please confirm the authenticity. Who created this source? What was the objective of generator of this source? To what extent the information is released, whether a part of information is only released, whether the information is doctored and fabricated, what type of information is released, because in many cases a specific type of information is intentionally released to mislead society or some people, whether such an institution that generates this information is reliable, and whether the information is paid or free. So please take into account certain considerations before selection of data. First is cost. Remember, time also is a very important factor, but cost in terms of labor and money has a great bearing on the researcher's ability to collect data and collect quality data. Confirm the quality and reliability. Confirm the depth and utility of the data. Then only we can have a right and meaningful understanding. So please keep in mind, the quality of research has much to do with quality of data. Source influences the quality and nature of inquiry. If a right source is not selected, the nature of inquiry will always be misleading or a failure. Source determines the scope and acceptability. A valid source gives more credibility to the research work, gives more credibility to the researcher, and adds to his image and acceptability. Source influences nature of inquiry. The purpose of inquiry is successful only when the source is appropriate, reliable, and credible. Source is the reflection of researcher's ability, caliber, and insight. What kind of source the researcher selects indicates what kind of researcher he is, what kind of person he is, what kind of his thought process is, what kind of his mindset is, and therefore always select a right source. So please remember, the world is full of obvious things which nobody by any chance ever observes. Many of us cannot observe, and therefore we are not successful as researchers. Develop a right way of thinking, develop a right sense of observation, and then only we can be successful researchers. There is a शेर कुछ half of the part I want to quote. मजनू की नजर से देख हर चीज में एक लैला है. To see that Laila, you have to have that vision of the Majnu. You have to have that skill of observation. That is how we can collect right and meaningful data. Thank you very much.
Gaurav,
Thank,
madam.
yes, sir. Thank you, sir. Thank you so much, sir, for your thought-provoking session. Uh, if there are any questions from participants, they can ask here. Participants are requested to ask their question. You can unmute yourself or you can drop your questions in chat box.
Okay, madam. Thank you. I think most of us
I
have
think, yes, there are
question.
no questions.
Okay.
Okay, now I would like to invite Professor Dinesh Gore sir to propose a vote of thanks.
Good afternoon, everyone. I am Professor Dinesh Gore. I am here to present vote of thanks for today's first session. I would like to thank our resource person, Dr. Sanjay Kaptan sir. Dr. Sanjay Kaptan sir has delivered the lecture on the topic of methods of data collections. As we know that research is based on the primary and secondary data. Sir has given the valuable information about the methods of data which we want to collect it. So, on the behalf of Tuljaram Chandra College, we are very much thankful for Dr. Kaptan sir. Also, I also thankful for all the participants who has participated in that webinars. Thanks once again. I will be request to Sweta Boroke madam take the charge overdue to Boroke madam.
Thank you. Please.
Okay, now with the permission of the convener, I declare first session is over. Now we will have a lunch break up to 1:30 p.m. and second session will start at 1:35 p.m. sharp. So all the participants are requested to join the session 10 minutes before the scheduled time. See you in this second session.